In the late Dharma era, practice was not easy, and the shaman culture that had been passed down for many years in northeast China gradually declined. The hall is desolate, and the immortal family is hidden in the world. Xiao Yining originally thought there was no need to inherit the family business. However, human calculation is not as good as natural calculation. Due to her innate good eyes, she was forced to step forward and become the CEO of Xian'er Tangkou, who worked 996 and completed the KPI of merit after work. She, who graduated from a prestigious school and worked in a large factory, was ashamed to talk about her so-called feudal superstition until an accident exposed her side job in front of her best friend Xiao Yining. Listen to my explanation. You. Do you make money from this side job? Gong Jemu. Are you two carrying me to raise immortals without me? Xiao Yining. Confused to the daily cultivation of immortality in virtue by the heavenly master, the second rich lady, and the iron-headed girl. A group portrait of three best friends as the main characters. Keywords of the novel. Xianmen Ziyabao only wants to complete the merit KPI without pop-ups. Xianmen Ziyabao only wants to complete the complete set of merit KPI TXT download. Xianmen Ziyabao only wants to complete the latest chapter of merit KPI reading. Chapter 1. Housing Dead Eye. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Chapter 1. Housing Dead Eye. The scorching sun is scorching. The dazzling noon sun shone directly on the roadside trees, coloring the thick green leaves with a brilliant golden hue. It is precisely the hottest day, with temperatures of 35 to 6 degrees Celsius that make even the supposed brilliant sunshine leave people feeling restless. The heat waves were boiling and rolling in the air, and there were not even a few insects on the road, not to mention birds. Xiao Yining took a taxi to the destination. The car stopped at the entrance of the community, and Xiao Yining took out his phone to confirm the building number and house number. He looked at the navigation, which was only a few hundred meters away, hesitated for a moment, and finally clicked to start navigation. Huang Shiba, who followed Xiao Yining out, giggled beside him to death. Huang Shiba is the youngest Huang Xian in the Tangkou branch, ranking 18th among them, and is the youngest. Due to the short duration of cultivation, there is no official name or honorific title. So everyone calls it by its ranking. Huang Shiba. Lu Qining. Lu Qining. Xiao Yining's dead fish has white eyes. Huang Shiba muttered incessantly, Lu Qining, what kind of wine did you bring to the king of monuments? Did you remember? Xiao Yining helped her earphones and pretended to be making a phone call. She replied angrily, I brought them, I didn't forget. Huang Shiba sked and his yellow tail turned into a flash of light, then disappeared. Xiao Yining doesn't care about it either. I opened my handbag and checked my equipment. I had cinnabar yellow paper runes and pens with me, and my portable incense burner was filled with incense ash. All other miscellaneous items were also properly prepared. A bottle of 55-degree Lao Baigan is still unopened, lying quietly in its bag. Not forgetting anything, Xiao Yining felt much more at ease. She opened the camera on her phone again to observe herself. As a new customer, in order to appear formal, Xiao Yining specially put on exquisite makeup in the morning, dressed in a new style Tang suit full of ancient charm, and even hung a string of peachwood 108 on her hand. My hair is not a ponytail that I usually tie casually, but a perfect and round bun head, and I even inserted a silver hairpin to match my Tang costume. Although it still doesn't cover up the youthful collagen on the face, it appears more atmospheric and stable. Xiao Yining nodded in satisfaction. Okay, start work. With the help of navigation, Xiao Yining successfully arrived at Building 6 where the client was located 10 minutes later. After taking the elevator to the 8th floor, Huang Shiba, who was squatting at the door, let Xiao Yining breathe a sigh of relief and solemnly rang the doorbell. Quickly, the sound of footsteps kicking and tapping came from inside the room, and the footsteps stopped at the door. Someone was looking outside with their cat's eyes. Xiao Yining cleared his throat and said, "Hello, door service." The people in the room seemed somewhat hesitant. The door did not open immediately. Xiao Yining was a bit confused. She looked up and confirmed the door number again. "Hello, Building 6, 805, right. Did you make an appointment for tonight's doorstep service?" There was a silence inside the door for a few seconds, then it slowly opened, revealing a face full of questions and familiarity. 4 years of college dormitories, 7 years of iron porcelain friendship, and 2 months of not gathering due to the pandemic and work, the two best friends met unexpectedly. Xiao Yining widened his eyes and said, "Me you." 10 minutes later, Xiao Yining and Mi Yu sat opposite each other at the dining table in the living room, looking at each other. The last 10 minutes should have been the longest 10 minutes in Xiao Yining's life. Since being forced to take over the family business in her senior year, although she has been a rising star for over 3 years, she has always kept it a good secret and has not disclosed it to anyone. Until today, I suddenly fell off my horse in front of my best friend. The simple words, social death, are not enough to describe the breakdown in her heart during these 10 minutes. Xiao Yining is a rising fairy. Chu Ma Xian is a master who worships the 5 great immortals, helps people alleviate disasters and difficulties, and takes care of things and illnesses. In the north, it is called a shaman or a rising horse immortal, while in the south, it is called a goddess or an immortal goddess. But in reality, they are all of the same school, with only slight differences in branches and beliefs. Xiao Yining is a traditional northern style of horse riding, and her family is inherited from the ancestors and belongs to the family business. Mi Yu scrutinized with a look on her face and said, "So, when I ran into you in college, you had already started doing this when I saw you applying incense." Xiao Yining quickly retorted, No, I just invited them to have a meal at that time." Mi Yu carefully recalled, "That was during your senior year internship. You always looked pale and dizzy, and you said you had a cold." Xiao Yining also remembered the painful process of getting along with the old immortal, and was filled with mixed feelings for a moment. "Yes, it was just when I was ordained, I had to intern and work during the day, and at night, I had to bind my orifices and acupoints to learn the 8 trigrams of the Book of Changes." Mi Yu snorted coldly, "So you kept it from me for 3 years. Xiao Yining looked bitter and forced, "What should I say?" Mi Yu choked up. The two looked at each other again. Xiao Yining scratched her head and said, "So how did you find my master?" This time it was Mi Yu's turn to be embarrassed. "It's a long story. Do you believe that a dead horse treats a living horse as a doctor?" Xiao Yining. Mi Yu explained, "You know about the renovation of my house I bought before, right?" Xiao Yining nodded and said, "I know. It's just because of this, we've been busy for a few months and haven't seen each other." That's why Xiao Yining only knew that her best friend had bought a house in the 3rd Ring Road, and she didn't know that Mi Yu had bought this community. That's why she fell off guard today. Mi Yu said with a deep pain, "I didn't expect it to be all because of this house. This is an unfounded disaster for me." Xiao Yining glanced sideways at Mi Yu's waist, which was still wearing a fixator, and tentatively asked, "So your back hurts?" Mi Yu nodded painfully and said, "Yes. The child has no mother, it's a long story. Mi Yu went smoothly when buying this house, but after buying it, there were ups and downs. Firstly, the brand new integrated steaming and baking machine embedded in the wall inexplicably malfunctioned and had to be repaired 2 or 3 times. Then, the kitchen wall lamp also broke and the wiring was repaired. Mi Yu hired a design and decoration company at a high price, but as soon as she moved in, she had a series of such incidents. She was so angry that she almost went to complain, feeling that she had spent a lot of money in vain. As a result, before I could file a complaint, Mio suffered a waist injury. As someone who has to work at a desk all year round, the lumbar spine and cervical spine are high-risk areas. The rice pomelo has a slightly protruding waist plate. In the words of a doctor, the severity of this lumbar injury is very subtle. It is neither severe enough to require surgery, nor minor enough to neglect care. In other words, it's grinding people. Not only should you pay attention to resting your waist, but you should also have regular follow-up visits to avoid worsening. Based on past experience, as long as you rest and take the medicine according to the doctor's advice, Mio will recover in 3 to 5 days. But this time, the back pain is coming with great force. 2 weeks later, not only did it not improve, but the pain became increasingly severe. Miyu can't even straighten her waist in pain. Then I went to see a doctor and spent thousands of dollars on a check-up, and I've told you about it too, Mio said. Xiao Yining nodded, she remembered this. That was last month. The doctor held a piece of rice pomelo and exclaimed, it doesn't seem to compress the nerves. Why are you still in such pain? It shouldn't be. Take film, fluoroscopy, traction, physical therapy, acupuncture and moxibustion, and try all the rice pomelo that should not be done. It's useless. Taking sick leave and lying flat on the big bed at home, Miyu had an indescribable expression on her face. Then I started having nightmares. Recalling the previous scene, Mio still had lingering palpitations. Continuous overtime and staying up late can lead to neurasthenia, poor sleep, and chaotic dreams. Workers have encountered this situation to some extent. Making money is not shabby. At first, Mio thought the same way. But things started to get a bit eerie. Mio began to frequently dream of haunted houses, ghosts, cemeteries, and cemeteries. In her dream, she walked alone in a dark wasteland, surrounded by gusts of wind and ghostly shadows. There was an old house with a big red lantern hanging, which looked like something from horror movies. As she was about to go there, she was awakened by some small animals rushing towards it. Social animals who have become accustomed to working overtime and staying up late have some experience of neurasthenia and poor sleep. A few days ago, Miyu didn't take it seriously. But for a week in a row, every night's dream was filled with these contents. Miyu noticed that even the time of waking up every night was exactly the same, at 4 o'clock in the morning. The rigorous analysis and summary of this have been conducted by Miyu. The commonality of these dreams is that they all appear in classic scenes from various horror movies or legends, with haunted houses, disturbed by animals before going and then waking up. The difference is that the animals that collide with her every day are different. Sometimes it's a snow-white rabbit with ruby-like eyes. Sometimes it's a fox with bright fur like a flame. At this point, Xiao Yining interrupted her. Xiao Yining. Rice, do your ancestors have fragrant roots? Miyu. What is fragrant root? Xiao Yining. Has anyone in your family ever opened a church or raised immortals? Miyu. I don't think so, have I? I haven't heard of it before. Xiao Yining fell silent, and her drifting gaze shifted to Huang Shiba, who was squatting on the nearby TV cabinet. Huang Shiba pretended to be mature and scratched his chin, saying, she did, I saw it all. Following Huang Shiba's gaze, Xiao Yining caught a glimpse of a fluorescent, furry tail behind the door of Mio's bedroom. Red, like a ball of fire. The same dream, the same wake-up time, coincidentally made Mio's back tingle. One night, her colleague and sister Azai, who had a good relationship, couldn't go back due to working overtime too late and stayed overnight at her house. After witnessing her waking up in the middle of the night, she recommended Su Daochang to her. Azai. Is there a possibility that science cannot explain things, and you can seek help from metaphysics? Because it was the kindness of a colleague, Miyu adopted the mentality of treating a dead horse as a living horse doctor and added Su Daochang's WeChat account. Xiao Yining suddenly said, so you found my master like this. Su Daochang is Xiao Yining's guide, who lives in NMG and runs a dojo. Miyu thought of Su Daochang as having a fairy-like demeanor, aloof and serious, with a face that read, believe it or not, get out of here, don't disturb my ascent. In fact, Su Daochang is gentle and talkative, interesting and lively. Even his avatar is a yellow weasel running in the snow with 4 claws, commonly known as yellow skin. Newcomers and new pitfalls, chatting for self-entertainment. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Housing Debt 2. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Chapter 2 Housing Debt 2 Miyu briefly described the process of the incident. Su Daochang nodded and said, "I'll incense and ask." Later, Su Daochang sent a picture of an incense burner filled with incense. Miyu. Su Daochang said, "Oh, I forgot, old lady. You can't understand. Let me tell you this fragrance and what I sense are the same style. It should be all about the ghost family. Don't worry, wait for me to invite Xian'er to take a look." Miyu. Ah. Okay. Upon hearing this, Xiao Yining nodded in affirmation and said, "Master told me the same thing. And I went to the incense store this morning to see what happened. The ghost family incense is very high, so it's a ghost family business." Miyu was confused and said, "What does Guijia mean?" Xiao Yining explained, "You are a collision victim, but what you hit is uncertain, so you need the master to ask the Xian family to take a look. The ghost family is the soul of a person who has left, as commonly understood. Some masters may say it more tactfully, not directly mentioning this word, but only stating that it is related to the Qingfeng family." "What is that immortal family? You don't even know about the 5 immortals of northeast China." Xiao Yining was shocked. "Don't say you're from northeast China anymore." Miyu sighed and said, "My parents came out early to work hard. I haven't lived in northeast China for a few years either." Xiao Yining said, "All right, the immortal family is the 5 most famous families, Hu Huang, Bai, Lu Hui, all of which are animal spirits that have achieved success in cultivation. They are called immortals to show respect and respect." Miyu understood and continued to review Xiao Yining. After a few hours, Su Daochang sent a message requesting a video connection. Miyu agreed. Su Daochang is a small, round-faced middle-aged man with a friendly appearance. If it weren't for the Taoist's bun and robe, he would look more like a small owner of a grocery store. Still the kind of particularly enthusiastic northeastern boss who insists on adding some pig head meat to you when you buy a pig ear. Su Daochang said, "Miss me, what? Have you had any property disputes with anyone recently? They insist that you owe him a house debt." According to Su Daochang, Miyu was a collision victim. She was entangled by a person who claimed to have a property dispute with Miyu, but it was because of a house debt that she became entangled. Su Daochang described the other person's appearance as follows. He is a tall and thin little old man, not young, and looks like he is in his 80s or 90s. His surname is Gao. He carefully looked at Miyu's face and said, "Sister, you haven't put on makeup, have you?" Miyu. "Not really." Su Daochang said, "That's okay, that's not a problem. Sometimes it's easy to not see the truth when the makeup is too heavy." He looked carefully and then calculated a little before nodding, "That's right. Sister, you'd better inquire about your family and see if there are any disputes with this newly purchased house. Also, ask relatives and friends if anyone knows this old man surnamed Gao." Su Daochang explained to Miyu, "According to our rules, it's usually a matter of courtesy before military action. He came to you for a reason, and we need to first see if that reason is right and if we can explain it. It's a nightmare, so you don't have to worry. The little animal you dreamt of should be the immortal family that had a fate with you before. When we found out that there was a ghost haunting you, we reminded you in the form of a dream before you came to me." According to Su Daochang, the immortal family of his family personally visited Miyu, confirmed that it was the ghost family that caused trouble, and found the troublemaker. After questioning, the little old ghost surnamed Gao swore that Miyu owed him a house debt, and he came to ask for it. If it is indeed Miyu who owes a debt, then only after paying it off can we invite the other party to leave and settle the matter. If Miyu is not in debt, then the other party is lying and causing trouble, and it's arbitrary to fight or rush. Su Daochang instructed me you to inquire as soon as possible before deciding what to do next. Although those who practice can forcibly drive each other away without asking for a reason, that is not about cultivating merit. This kind of thing is unclear to others, but he doesn't do it anyway. But don't panic either, Su Daochang comforted. Since you have already gone to talk to the other party, this period belongs to the negotiation stage. If he still bothers you, it's his fault. I will let the immortal family take care of you. Although you won't get better immediately, you won't be disturbed again. Su Daochang also knew that Miyu was not steady, so he arranged for Xiao Yining to come and help Miyu take a look the next day and clean up her house. Having understood the general situation of the matter, Xiao Yining became more down to earth. She glanced at the time and began to take things out of her bag while saying to Miyu, "Let me help you clean your house first." Miyu looked at her as she put things out of the bag: a small copper incense burner, a stick of incense, yellow paper, baijiu. Xiao Yining placed everything on the table, picked up the incense burner first, walked to the door to take a look, and reached out to grab a handful of incense ash from the incense burner and spread it on the door, leaving a gray-white mark. There was nothing added to the incense ash, and Xiao Yining grabbed and wiped it from the small incense burner with his bare hands. However, the grayish-white powder remained at the spot where Xiao Yining applied it as if it had been cast a spell, forming an ancient and simple shape. What's the point? Miyu was curious. Xiao Yining focused on applying it and casually said, "Ashes ward off evil spirits. Doors that have been smeared with ashes are not allowed to enter unless invited." As she spoke, Xiao Yining finally finished wiping the door. She closed her eyes, focused on herself, and opened it again. She carefully looked around Miyu's house and saw that there were indeed some strands of gray-black air remaining in the window-sill entrance and corners. Considering that Miyu is a new house, it is difficult to tidy up everywhere with incense ash. Xiao Yining took out a few yellow watch papers, dipped his hands in incense ash and wiped out traces on the paper. Then, he skillfully folded the paper into a triangle and stuffed one where he saw black air. He watched as the air slowly faded and dissipated. Clapping the dust on his hands, Xiao Yining washed his hands and took out a small bowl from his bag, starting to mix cinnabar. She said it was cinnabar, but it wasn't in powder form, it was cinnabar ink that she had prepared at home. Purified cinnabar granules from a baomai were mixed with 7 or 8 kinds of medicinal materials, such as peach gum and Angelica dehurica, and then mixed with baijiu and glutinous rice water. It's not difficult, but there are many processes involved. Xiao Yining usually does it once a year, and uses this type of cinnabar ink for writing symbols. Miyu blinked her eyes as she sat next to her, curious like a baby, and continued, "So you should also have a fairy family following you, right? Did you bring it today?" Xiao Yining explained, "The entrance of the Xianjia Hall is like a company, with rules in place. Whoever is on duty will take care of it. Usually, it's someone's turn. However, the ones who usually help me run errands are mostly from the Huang family." As she spoke, she looked at Huang Shiba next to her and smiled. Huang Shiba watched as Xiao Yining played with cinnabar ink, ignoring that Miyu couldn't hear it speak. He then added, "Our Huang family has the fastest legs and can travel thousands of miles every day, nowhere to go. I have a short cultivation day now, and sooner or later, I will also become the master." It jumped onto the TV and made a "cat teaches only me" emoji gesture. As if hearing its sound, Miyu's bedroom door moved slightly. Miyu turned back at the sound and said, "Daodu. The bedroom door is about to stop moving." The white glove orange cat, lying on the bed in the bedroom, tilted its head with a bewildered and innocent expression and said, "Meow." Pour cinnabar ink into a small bowl of celadone, add some baijiu and prepared peach leaf water in advance, and Xiao Yining carefully mixed it with a rune pen. As she stirred, she asked Xiao Yining, "So, you don't know where this old man surnamed Gao came from? What kind of debt is it?" Miyu rolled her eyes and sighed, "That's right. It was too late yesterday, and I called my mom this morning to ask. I bought this house in full, and it went smoothly without any disputes. We don't have any old houses, and my parents bought them in full. We've been living there for decades, and we don't know an old man surnamed Gao who passed away at the age of 80 or 90. Miyu sighed again and asked Xiao Yining, what should I do if I encounter a situation like yours? Xiao Yining said, it's best if you can find this tall old man or someone who knows him on your end, so that you can know what his so-called real estate dispute is. Otherwise, we'll have to ask him again. Miyu was puzzled and said, can't you ask him? Didn't your master just go and ask directly yesterday? Xiao Yining explained, it's not impossible, but asking him is a one-sided statement. People are not trustworthy. Do you think ghosts are trustworthy? Miyu sighed again and said, that's right. But if my mom doesn't know, I can't think of anyone else to ask. Xiao Yining thought for a moment and gave her an idea. Why don't you first inquire about your parents' relatives and friends, and see if there is anyone with the surname Gao who passed away not long ago? Miyu shook her head and said, no. I've asked carefully, but my mom doesn't know a few people with the surname Gao, let alone an old man. This matter only started when you moved into this house. When you bought and sold this house, were there any people with the surname Gao involved? Well, you're right, it's possible. I'll check again tomorrow. Xiao Yining mixed the cinnabar together with baijiu, picked up a small bowl and looked at the rice pomelo. Come on. Go ahead and change your clothes that are not afraid of dirt, and I will take a picture for you. The cinnabar is very difficult to wash, and after taking a picture of your clothes, I think you can't have them. My best friend, Miyu, didn't hesitate to flip through a long T-shirt and put it on. Come on, are these clothes okay? Xiao Yining nodded and said, are you sure you don't want it? She put the talisman aside and dipped her hand in the cinnabar liquid from the bowl, making a gesture of wanting to slap it. She glanced at the bright red tail behind the bedroom door from the corner of her eye and said loudly, clear your body and avoid the immortal family. The tail swayed and disappeared after retracting the door. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Housing Debt 3. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3 Housing Debt 3 Xiao Yining pursed her lips and smiled before taking a slap at Miyu. Strangely enough, with Xiao Yining's slapping movements, Miyu could feel a noticeable heat coming with it. She stirred up and felt as if some cold breath had been driven out of her body. Xiao Yining moved very quickly, silently reciting something in her mouth. She kept moving her hands one after another, patting her back and chest. The strength is light, but every move seems very solid. However, in 3 to 5 minutes, the T-shirt on Miyu's body was covered with mottled red marks, and the cinnabar liquid in the small celadone bowl was just about to be used up. It's done. Xiao Yining carefully looked at Miyu and didn't see anything unusual. She let out a long sigh and said, you've taken off your clothes. I'll wash my hands and push your waist. This is obviously an additional service from a close friend. Miyu looked at the time and said, do you still have time to return to the company? I can't ignore you even if I don't have time. Xiao Yining glanced at her. Don't worry, I'm taking a leave. After finishing her busy work, Xiao Yining packed up and returned to the company to continue moving bricks, leaving Miyu alone in a state of confusion afterwards. The good news is that her waist really doesn't hurt anymore. The bad news is that her materialist worldview, which has persisted for over 20 years, has been shaken. After seeing off Xiao Yining, she placed the clean house talisman left by Xiao Yining in an area that the cat couldn't reach, and then grabbed the fat cat's pocket and buried her face in it. Woo 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 Dowdu, hurry up and paste it on Ma. Today, there's a lot of information. After a while, Miyu, who had maintained her san value by sucking cats, sat up and took out her phone. I need to tell Mookie, she said. She quickly opened WeChat and knocked on the top profile picture. Moo 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 moo. Just as she started, she hesitated for a moment before deleting it again. What do you mean by that? Mio angrily scratched her hair and said, forget it, go to sleep. We'll talk about it tomorrow. If Miyu's level of belief in mysticism is based on a perfect score of 100, then when she first added Su Daochang's WeChat account, she only scored 5 points, which was completely an act of powerlessness and recklessness. When Su Daochang firmly told her about the housing debt and the old man surnamed Gao, his score rose to 15 points, but he was still in doubt. After seeing Xiao Yining as Su Daochang's disciple, Miyu's level of trust instantly soared to 50 to 60 points, on the brink of passing. This is the trust that her best friend has given Xiao Yining for many years. Although it is not enough to completely overturn her 3 views formed over the past 20 years, there has still been a huge leap. However, on the second day, the score went straight up to 80 points. The remaining 20 points are the space she has left for her limited worldview. After asking me Mama again, Miyu called the agent who had originally purchased the house to inquire. Finally, I learned a piece of news. Before she purchased this house, there was another buyer who was not someone else, but a neighbor of Mio on the same floor. They were an old couple, and the man's surname was Gao, in his early 80s. I heard they originally wanted to buy this house for their daughter to live in, so that she could take care of them nearby. However, before signing the intention contract, for some reason, it seems like they have backed out, said the agent. Miyu could only feel a chill surge from her back as she listened to the agent's words. She knew the neighbor mentioned by the agent, and during her renovation period, the neighbor's house had a funeral. She has also seen the photo, which shows a tall and thin old man. Leaving behind an old lady in her 70s and 80s, she has been a bit dazed since then and doesn't quite know anyone. Sometimes the old lady even feels that her husband is still there, and when she goes out, she places the old man's shoes on the shoe rack in the hallway. Miyu sometimes comes to decorate the house after work late at night and feels a bit scared when she sees the shoes in the hallway. Because of this, Mio has also postponed the time to move in. She told her visiting mother everything in detail. Miyu's mother turned her eyes and patted her daughter's hand, saying, "Wait, give it to me." Miyu's mother took off her windbreaker and put on a fancy coat, and went out at 6 or 7 in the evening. Miyu stared blankly on the balcony as her usually quiet mother seamlessly integrated into the crowd of square dancing, singing and dancing in a lively manner. At around 8 o'clock in the evening, Mio's mother slowly returned and took off her coat to wash her hands. She sighed, "You exercise quite a lot. If you don't take good care of your waist, you probably won't be able to jump when you get older. You can't keep up." Miyu choked silently and said, "Mom, hurry up and get to the point. What's the rush?" Mio's mother poured a glass of water and sat down. "That Su Daochang you're talking about is quite impressive." Mio Mama heard a lot of gossip among the aunties dancing in the square. Under her gentle inquiry, there was quite a bit of information about this neighbor surnamed Gao, as it was not too cold news. As soon as the late old man was mentioned, the leading dancer frowned and said, "That old man is not easy to get along with. He used to have a good job, retired from government agencies, and everyone looks proud with their noses up in the air. His wife is pretty good, but unfortunately, after the old man was gone, the old lady became a bit confused. When it comes to the background of buying a house, the leading lady who has a good grasp of most of the community's network also speaks very well. He has been proud for his whole life, and his children's relationships are not good. His son and his family are all abroad and don't come back all year round. However, his daughter is in China and doesn't move around much. It seems that his daughter's marriage didn't go well, which was arranged by him in the beginning." Auntie Lingwu also felt a bit sad when she mentioned it. Later on, his daughter divorced and brought a little girl, who was only 2 or 3 years old. He had promised to buy your house for his daughter to take care of the children and the elderly nearby. As soon as he took care of the house, he was hospitalized and even the money was invested, but no one was able to save it. If the money is gone, the matter of the house will naturally turn yellow. Judging from the current situation, the old lady lives alone here, and her daughter and granddaughter have not moved in. Has the relationship between Mr. Gao and his daughter eased? Is there his filial son and virtuous grandson in front of the hospital bed? Miyu doesn't know how much disturbance there was in between, but the house that Gao Lao too had been longing for didn't end up being bought, which became a lingering concern for him. Even after his death, he couldn't let go of it and stubbornly entangled himself with Miyu. After confirming that there were no disputes or debts with her house, Miyu breathed a sigh of relief and told her best friend Xiao Yining the news. I'm sure I don't owe any so-called house debt, and I don't have any real estate disputes with him at all. He looked at this house, but he didn't buy it himself. I came to see it later and bought it. Can't just rely on him just because he has seen this house. Miyu was very angry when she mentioned this. Especially today, she experienced the long-lost relaxation in her waist, and the thought of the past month or two of back pain being a completely unforeseeable disaster made her even more angry. Xiao Yining comforted Miyu and said, "Don't be angry. Everyone has bad people, let alone ghosts. And many people become ghosts, and their personalities will also change. After all, biology subjects should have changed, right? They have changed from carbon-based organisms to energy bodies. Ning Ning, how do you usually handle this situation? It also depends on personal habits. As for me, I usually discuss things in a friendly manner. Although the other person may not pay attention, I still need to be able to persuade them to leave. My personality is not very good at fighting, you know." Ah. Miyu widened her eyes in anger. Does the other party ignore you and want to have a good conversation with him? If he can have a good conversation, he won't bother me. Are all your immortals willing to talk too? Cough cough cough, what's that? Xiao Yining blushed and said, there is a saying in our industry, what kind of person is the top immortal, which means. Miyu rolled her huge white eyes and interrupted Xiao Yining, okay, I understand. If more than 7 years is not enough for her to understand Xiao Yining, it would be ridiculous. Xiao Yining has been afraid of the dark, ghosts, and things since she was young. Running to another city to attend university and work is the most rebellious thing she has ever done in her life. But this is the person who is currently helping others with disaster relief, practicing and doing meritorious deeds. Not to mention letting Xiao Yining go to fight ghosts, she dared to talk to ghosts with incredible bravery. Miyu endured it for a while and couldn't help but ask Xiao Yining, don't you tremble when you encounter this kind of family trouble? Xiao Yining's eyes lit up and she showed her expression of understanding me. I'm afraid, so you didn't show me the clean house. I took leave and came early. I'm also afraid when it gets dark. Miyu showed a pitiful expression on her face. Xiao Yining's timidity is the most famous among their best friends. She has to turn on the night light when sleeping at night, and the bathroom light is bright all night. Equally famous are Gong Jiamu's head iron and Miyu's own rotten peach blossom. Xiao Yining quickly explained, looking back with a look that was unbearable. You don't understand, I have a reason for all of this. When he was in school, Xiao Yi would rather stubbornly reject feudal superstition and stick to a red heart towards materialism. She had no choice but to have naturally good eyes. My mother, father, and aunt all do this. She occasionally sees things that normal people shouldn't see at home. Xiao Yining is naturally timid, and his family is also feudal. Her father has a bad temper and thinks that Xiao Yining is missing out, so whenever someone asks him, he will bring her along. Zhao's father is a practitioner of yin tang, and he often takes on tasks such as acupoint pointing, observing the path, and warding off ghosts and evil spirits. Proud of his daughter's talent, sometimes Zhao's father shows off his thoughts and even tugs at the young Xiao Yining to show her, come, my daughter, show me where this ghost is located. Xiao Yining, who was still young, squinted her eyes with tears and carefully looked around. When she saw it, she immediately closed her eyes and shook her little hand to show her father. Zhao's father was so happy that he slapped his thigh, and Xiao Yining was so scared that he trembled all over. Over the years, Xiao Yining has developed a rabbit-like courage, afraid of darkness, ghosts, and turmoil. But now, this person has become a rising star who has to deal with these things every day. Thinking of this, Mio suddenly understood why the shaman industry has gradually disappeared in the tide of the times. If all the shamans are people like Xiao Yining, it's difficult for this industry not to disappear. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Housing Debt 4. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4 Housing Debt 4. Okay, your master's style of handling things shouldn't be like yours, right? Miyu asked anxiously. Oh, he's not. He's the kind of person who can fight and calculate. His family's immortal cultivation is very deep. When talking about topics beyond timidity, Xiao Yining spoke again and said, but the one who can fight the most is my dad, so he dares to open the inn hall. Although he can't see, he has strong courage and energy. As an important component of Xiao Yining's childhood shadow, Zhao's father's fierce ranking in her mind has always been high. That's it. I'll make an appointment with your master to solve this matter tonight, Miyu agreed. Su Daochang and Xiao Yining have completely different styles of behavior. After hearing Miyu's description of this matter, Taoist Su immediately offered incense and invited the immortal family to talk to old Gao. Not very smooth. It has been proven that paranoid individuals who die will only become more paranoid and difficult to deal with, and will not suddenly become enlightened and become Buddha just because they have died once. Because she bought this house, my daughter's relationship with me has not been restored yet. My old lady hasn't been around for a few days now, and she can't even enjoy the blessings of her grandchildren. Su Daochang is not as good-tempered as Xiao Yining. He didn't talk much and came over to reply to Miyu. Sister, this old man is not someone to communicate with, and the lion is very talkative. This house has nothing to do with him, he has been entangled for so long, and now we can't talk about sending him away. Su Dao's long words conveyed a meaning both inside and outside. Why don't we just beat him away? Miyu was afraid that her master would be as gentle as her apprentice. Without hesitation, she nodded and said, that would be great. Ah, it should be great. I've been bothering you for so long, and I'm angry. If we can't reach an agreement, we can just forcefully drive them away, right? Su Daochang said, of course it's possible. If you run away directly, it will damage his vitality and have no impact on you. Miyu also said happily, then let's fight, please. Okay, Su Daochang happily agreed and closed the video connection. He rolled up his sleeves, put on incense, and solemnly mobilized his troops and generals, saying, those who are in court today can fight or want to fight, you can go. You can't beat him to death. You also have the face to let me burn a house and offerings for him, as he is used to. In the world that Miyu couldn't see, the yellow immortals, Hu immortals, and ghost immortals laughed and rushed out one by one along Su Daochang's lit incense, transforming into one whirlwind after another, roaring in a certain direction. In the wind, there was a faint sound of sharp laughter. Don't worry, you can't kill him. Give him face. The last ones to come out were a few Python immortals and Chang immortals with cold expressions but looking very capable of fighting. They nodded at Su Daochang and chased after the several whirlwinds ahead. Miyu's lower back pain healed without treatment. There have been no more setbacks in the new house. After a week or two, nothing happened to her body and it was confirmed that the problem had been solved. Finally, Mio heard the sound of her worldview completely collapsing. The problems that modern medicine has not solved have been solved in 3 days by metaphysics. The rice pomelo was greatly shocked. Miyu felt puzzled. Miyu initiated a communication with Xiao Yining. Miyu. So, based on that, what doctor should I see if I'm sick? Xiao Yining was shocked and said, don't overcorrect. If you're sick, see a doctor first. Miyu was heartbroken and said, I've been looking at my waist for a few months now. It hurts so much that I've been leaning on crutches. I've checked everything that needs to be checked and taken the medicine that needs to be taken, but it hasn't improved for over a month. It's only been 3 days. 3 days. Xiao Yining said, "Let me tell you something about myself. There has been a small patch of skin on my leg with snake scale-like marks. I always thought it was a disciple mark left by my python family fairy." Miyu was curious and said, "And then what?" Xiao Yining said, "So I never went to see it. It wasn't until the last time I went to see another disease and had the doctor take a look." "And then what?" Miyu asked. Xiao Yining said, "Then the doctor prescribed a tube of ointment for less than 10 yuan, and it took 3 days to apply." Xiao Yining earnestly said, "So when we're sick, let's first believe in science. Science can't explain or solve things. Let's try to seek help from metaphysics, okay?" Miyu was surprised and said, "You're not doing something right. Normally, in your industry, shouldn't you take the initiative to attract customers?" Xiao Yining glared at her and said, "Stereotypes. People who live exceptionally well and those who live exceptionally poorly usually don't come to us. People who live exceptionally well have nothing to ask for, and even those who live exceptionally poorly find it difficult to have a significant turning point. Only those who are hesitant and indecisive in the middle will come to see us. Moreover, although the immortal family is known as the immortal family and indeed has abilities beyond our human capabilities, they are all animal immortals. Although the ghost family was originally human, they no longer belong to humans. Their way of thinking is different from ours." Xiao Yining earnestly cautioned his best friend, "If you force a result, the immortal family will help you achieve it, but the process may not be what you want. So it's better not to demand it or not to demand it, especially not to force it. If it's just calculation and observation, it's better to assist you in avoiding or choosing." Miyu listened and pondered, "Do you have some rules here?" Xiao Yining nodded and said, "Yes, and different immortal families have different strengths and taboos. It is also related to abilities and personality. For example, my Peach Blossom Palace is prosperous, so my Tangkou is particularly good at marriage. But my old immortal doesn't give things to people who are not legitimate and even force them. There was a woman before." Xiao Yining talked about something she did when she first started in this industry. One day, a young and beautiful guest arrived. This person was also introduced by someone and came here admiring his name. He knew that although Xiao Yining was young, he was particularly skilled in marriage. This young and beautiful guest is dressed in a luxurious brand, with a dazzling array of jewelry that adds up to a lot of value. As soon as she enters the door, she puts on an attitude that money is not a problem and repeatedly asks the master to help her see if what she is looking for can be achieved. At that time, Xiao Yining had just entered the industry and lacked the ability to figure out what the guests were looking for. It was necessary to invite the immortal family to take a look at such matters. Her cultivation is still shallow, and the process of inviting immortals is meticulous and error-free, in order to invite the next immortal family. When Tangkou was on duty, it was a Hu family's aunt, also known as Hu Qijie. Her cultivation was not the strongest among the Hu family's immortals, but also one of the top ones. As soon as Hu Qijie got up, she calmly picked up her tea and prepared to see off the guests. "I can't handle this matter. You can go back." The young guest's charming phoenix eyes displeased Zhangde, "Master, why can't you just see it? Do you know what I want to see?" Hu Qijie gave her a smirk and said, "I know what you're looking at, but do you know who you are?" Hu Qijie leaned closer to the guest and sarcastically said, "What kind of identity are you? Do you dare to come to me with this identity?" The guest's face turned red, both embarrassed and angry, and he said, "What is my identity? How come I dare not ask? I can't do anything. What kind of master are you? What kind of immortal family are you?" Hu Qijie was not angry either, she just sarcastically said, "You don't need to say much, I definitely won't help you. Don't think about it either. What you ask for can't be achieved, and the one in your stomach can't be saved. The guest was furious and picked up his bag, then turned around and left. After the guest left, Hu Qijie impatiently played with her nails and said, "Even a mistress dares to come to me for help, what kind of thing?" It angrily scolded Xiao Yining and said, "Next time, take a closer look before taking over the task. Don't show me anything fragrant or smelly." After turning around, she didn't even take a sip of wine and went back. So, whether we can do our job or not depends on fate. Those who seek help not only rely on fate, but also on character. Otherwise, they will face retribution, Xiao Yining said seriously. Miyu and Xiao Yining have reached a consensus on their views on metaphysics. So naturally, we can no longer hide from another member of our best friend group. Gong Jemu. But how to tell Gong Jemu has become a new question. A knife extends the head, and a knife shrinks the head. Why don't we schedule a night with our best friend and just say it? Xiao Yining gritted her teeth and said in the end. The night of girlfriends was a small agreement exclusively for the three of them. No matter how busy they are, no matter how much they have to do with each other, they always make plans to meet at a member's house every once in a while, eat, drink, chat and share each other's lives together, then stay overnight and have fun the next day. And this period of time is not limited, and the longest cannot exceed 3 months. So this Saturday, Gong Jemu was invited to Xiao Yining's house. After a happy seafood feast, the three of them nestled in different positions. Speaking of which, I haven't seen you mention your Mr. Chen recently. He's on a business trip. Xiao Yining lazily asked Mio while lying on the sofa. We broke up, Mio said coldly. Oh, Xiao Yining suddenly became hesitant. What's going on with this? Gong Jemu, lying horizontally on the lounge chair, although motionless, turned his head towards Mio with great effort. Mio has a strange physique. Any boy who interacts with her, during the pursuit period, is certainly 1,000 good, but everyone will reveal fatal problems in just a few months after formal love. Every boyfriend has a very thorough breakdown, and the problem is impossible to tolerate, only to break up tragically. The shortest boyfriend agreed to be together for Miyu's nodding, only a week after breaking up, and the longest persisted for 3 months. In the self-destructing guidebook of Mio's quirky boyfriend, one was sent to a hotel by a friend due to drinking too much, and the next day, he woke up with a drug addiction and was reported to the hotel. Someone was beaten to the company's doorstep by their husband because they had intervened in the marriage of a company executive. There are various reasons why I suddenly exposed myself as a chauvinistic straight man with cancer and a mother's treasure man in my passionate love, despite everything being fine. Regarding this, Miyako's other best friend, Miyako, once expressed her sincere and sharp emotions. Miyako's ex-boyfriend has broadened my understanding of species diversity. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Scum Man 1. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5 Scum Man 1. The various past situations have already made Xiao Yining and Gong Jemu take it for granted, and have also made Miyu go from being heartbroken at the beginning to becoming accustomed to being ashamed and angry now. So now Xiao Yining and Gong Jemu's curiosity about eating melons is much greater than their concern for their best friend. Miyu rolled her eyes and said, "He's a scumbag." Gong Jemu cut and said without hesitation, "Which ex-boyfriend of yours is not a scumbag?" Miyu was speechless, and after a moment of silence, she became angry and embarrassed. "Are you still listening? Listen, speak quickly." Xiao Yining kindly raised her hand and made a zipper action in her mouth. Mr. Chen, who has just become his predecessor, is a very well-mannered gentleman in the impression of Xiao Yining and Gong Jemu. He has been gentle but firm in his pursuit of Mio for more than half a year, and finally confessed after picking him up and dropping him off for several consecutive nights. Mio happily nodded on his passenger seat and received a sweet long kiss. Then the man refused the proposal to sit upstairs very gentlemanly, gently saying that it was too urgent just after we were together. He looked at Mio very seriously and said, "I am confessing to you with the feeling that I want to go with you in my future life." We have a long day ahead, and I don't want to waste time. You worked overtime hard today, and I hope you have a good rest and a good night's sleep with tonight's good mood. Then tomorrow, I will pick you up to eat at the restaurant you said you want to go to on your social media. How about that? Miyu was deeply moved and couldn't sleep that night. She posted a long voice message in a group of 3 best friends to show her love to her 2 single dog best friends. Gong Jiamu was deeply impressed by this and still remembers it vividly. Thanks to the blessing of Mio, she was tragically late the next day. Gong Jiamu. How long has Mr. Chen persisted? Xiao Yining recalled for a moment, at most half a month. The 2 of them turned their heads to look at Mio, waiting for her to reveal the correct answer. The answer is, 1 day. After a beautiful sleep, Miyu, the defendant, got up early the next day to tidy up and put on exquisite makeup, preparing for today's date. Then, on the morning rush hour subway, Mio came across a post about the gentleman's ex-girlfriend. Or former fiancé-a's anonymous disclosure. In a certain group. The photo with a thin QR code and various information were clearly visible to insiders. The content of the post is too long and will not be repeated. In short, the scumbag is bustling with lights and wine in the big city, and his fiancée-ae is taking care of his parents in his hometown. After the fiancée-ae became pregnant, she sweetly informed her that she had received a heartfelt confession from the scumbag, saying, "We are already family, and I cannot deceive you." So the originally sweet lunch date turned into a tragic breakup scene. Miyu raised a question with a faint hope, but unfortunately the other party was stiff and speechless. Gong Jiamu. He's not a dead duck with a hard mouth. Xiao Yining agreed, you should be able to argue to some extent, right? Miyu said, anyway, he expressed some hurt caused by my lack of trust in him. Then I mentioned breaking up. Gong Jiamu sent a congratulatory message. Well done. Don't eat his PUA. Xiao Yining gave a thumbs up and said, so, he belongs to the scumbag of the stone hammer. Can he still explain the flower? Miyu flattened her mouth and collapsed beside Gong Jiamu, holding Xiao Yining's cat pudding. Gong Jiamu's eyes lit up and he cautiously extended a hand. Seeing that the cat remained motionless, Gong Jiamu kept the human still and only the manually extended one, and began to remotely control the cat. The pudding moved restlessly for a moment, but soon succumbed to Miyu's skilled cat smashing technique and lay motionless in her arms. Hey hey! Gong Jiamu happily flipped over and extended his hands, becoming even more intense as he joyfully rolled up. This is a rare sight of Gong Jiamu running away without turning around. Gong Jiamu doesn't remember when it started. Anyway, she was like this when she was very young. Although it can't be said that cats dislike dogs, the cats and dogs in the community never actively approached her for her to touch. This is very puzzling for Gong Jiamu, who has always been fond of furry hair. To be honest, Mr. Chen broke the record, didn't he? We broke up after just 1 day together. Gong Jiamu commented while happily chatting with his cat. Chen should be recorded as a milestone in the collection of Miyu Jia boyfriend. I just want to have a sweet relationship, why is it so difficult, said Mio. Feeling frustrated, Xiao Yining looked at the ceiling in confusion and said, how many of them are there? Why were they all good before? Every time we were together, we would have various strange things. I don't need to ask, those immortals in her family are doing it. Huang Shiba, who was very tactful, never knew which corner to come out of, interjected. I saw one last time and smelled a few others. Someone from her family must have been out of the house before. Can you ask her? Xiao Yining turned her head and pretended not to hear or see, but remained silent. Can you just ask? Huang Shiba stubbornly said, today, I don't see anyone from her family following her. Do you want to follow her or can't you? Xiao Yining silently covered her face with a pillow and pretended to be dead. Huang Shiba was so angry that he jumped, but unfortunately, the other 2 living people in the room couldn't see or hear it. In the end, he ran back to the hall in a fit of anger. After a few minutes of silence in the room, Mio said in a somewhat confused tone, "Do you think I can't meet a good person who's not a scumbag? I've been seriously in love all this time. Did I do something wrong?" Gong Jiamu stood up straight, and as soon as she sat up, the pudding quickly gave a jolt and jumped off Mio's knee before running away. Gong Jiamu didn't take it seriously and ignored the cat that had run away. He said to Mio, "Can you stop looking for reasons on yourself just because you met scumbags? Scumbags are because they don't have good character. What does it have to do with you? Who hasn't encountered scumbags a few times in their life?" Miyu said, "But they haven't only encountered scumbags, have they?" Gong Jiamu choked up. Xiao Yining leaned over and said, "Why don't I help you see when your true fate will arrive? Maybe it's fate that hasn't arrived, or maybe it's a marriage or something. Let me help you see." Miyu seemed to suddenly react and said, "Yeah, you can help me take a look. If I'm destined to get married late, then I'm not in a hurry to take it slow." Xiao Yining immediately reached out his hand and said, "Come on, give me your bazi. I'll pinch it for you first, and then I'll offer you incense later." Miyu opened her mouth and said, "XX year, XX month. Wait a minute." Gong Jiamu interrupted the two men in high spirits, "Look at me, my friends, look at your confused friends." She stood up and looked at the two sisters suspiciously, "Are you sure you have something to tell me?" More than 10 minutes later, Gong Jiamu, who had listened to everything, remained very calm. "You're a horse fairy. Would you still do this? Miyu doesn't understand." The rice pomelo was greatly shocked. Miyu asked, "Why aren't you surprised at all?" Gong Jiamu turned his head silently and said, "What surprises me about being a horse fairy? I have plenty of them at home, but I feel like most of them are scammers." Miyu doesn't understand. Why are all three of us from northeast China, and only I don't know this? "Am I a fake northeasterner?" said Mio with a questioning voice. "Let's just say, is there such a possibility?" Xiao Yining said cautiously, "Your parents started their businesses too early and took you out of northeast China to do business too early. You didn't have the opportunity to be exposed to this cultural soil." Gong Jiamu raised her eyebrows and translated, "Her meaning is that your parents have gained money and lost the opportunity for feudal superstition." "How could this be feudal superstition? This is mysticism." Miyu turned his spear. Gong Jiamu scratched his head and said, "I maintain a reasonable skeptical attitude. I haven't encountered it before, how do I know? And what you're saying may be related to magnetic fields. Can science explain it in the future?" Gong Jiamu maintained a middle ground attitude of respect, understanding, and distrust towards his best friend's side job. As a family born from hunting in the Xingyan Mountains of northeast China, Gong Jiamu respects nature and all things, and holds a resolute sentiment of, "I have never encountered anything unknown or unexplainable, and I don't know if I can do it." Miyu wanted to explain to Gong Jiamu a bit, but Xiao Yining remained calm and said, "There's nothing I want to ask, anything I want to ask. Believe it or not, it's okay. Believe yourself, believe in science is also quite good. Miyu hates iron for not becoming steel. How can you be a good CEO with such a mentality? Are your KPIs too old to achieve?" Xiao Yining defended, "We are practitioners. Helping people relieve disasters and difficulties is a way to cultivate merit. You can't force your head without drinking water. Some people have different choices. Moreover, some people, I feel that what they need is not the guidance of the immortal family, but a psychologist. Come to talk to me for a night. They can't open their minds, and it's useless for others to say anything." Xiao Yining roast. Perhaps we talked too much about scumbags, and at around 11 o'clock at night, Xiao Yining's side job WeChat received a guest. The victim is an old customer who comes a few times a year. "Every year I come to see you. Where does she have so many things to ask for?" Miyu was curious. It's not about seeking things, usually it's about breaking through the Tai Sui year, or opening a financial pool on September 9th to open a financial path. As soon as they heard about the money, the eyes of Mi Yu and Gong Jiamu, who were all focused on making money, lit up. What is a supplementary treasury? Xiao Yining scratched his head and came up with an understandable way to explain. You both played, right, King? Replenishing the treasury is like a blue buff. If you don't go out and fight, you'll be useless. If you go to battle, you'll get twice the result with half the effort. She shrugged and said, actually, many mystical things are like this. There are very few things that can reverse the universe and help you achieve something out of thin air. There are also things that no one will do for you, which consume a lot of energy, damage merit, and even cause an effect. What you can do is usually this kind of boost, plus buffs like luck. You can do it yourself, but I will give you a push towards luck and success. Gong Jiamu nodded and said, actually, it's quite enough. Many people and things are actually inferior to this one. People who really don't do anything and lie down waiting are useless even if you help them. Mi Yu also agreed, so, that's to say, there's no need to worry about those people coming to ask, why bother? Xiao Yining nodded happily and said, how else can the three of us be best friends? Our values and thoughts are so consistent. Unlike some people who like to take the wrong path. Miyagi roast. Ah, yes, the three of us are materialists. Ha ha ha, dialectical materialism in metaphysics. Mi Yu smiled and collapsed on the sofa. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Scum Man II. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Scum Man II. The victim of this incident is Su Jing, a 24-year-old girl. The indigenous people of the imperial capital do not live in the fifth ring road of the city, but they also have houses. Running a small business on your own belongs to a family condition where you have no worries about food and clothing, but you can't even talk about how wealthy you are. Su Jing is a jade-shaped girl from a small family. She has been raised well by her family since childhood, and her life has always been smooth sailing. Therefore, she has a good and gentle personality, and is the kind of well-behaved neighbor girl. Due to her overly obedient personality in taking care of her small shop, Su Jing's social circle is very narrow, so she doesn't have many opportunities to meet the opposite sex. Traditional family members have been introducing suitable blind dates to her in the past 2 years, and Su Jing has no intention of rebellion or opposition. I don't know if it's luck or misfortune, but after 2 or 3 blind dates, Su Jing met her current boyfriend Zhou Peng. Master Xiao, I just want to calculate what he really thinks and whether he really wants to be with me. Su Jing asked in distress on WeChat. She has cried several times because of Zheng Peng's recent lukewarm attitude. To be honest, Zhou Peng didn't have the heart to be with her, but this person was very thoughtful and considerate in front of her family and friends, giving her a lot of face. If it were to say that Zhou Peng was completely devoted to being with her, he would be neither too cold nor too hot in private. He would not reply to calls or answer messages, and when they were dating, they only knew how to play with their phones, showing a nonchalant attitude. Because she was a regular customer and had met Xiao Yining, she knew that Master Xiao was a young and gentle girl. Su Jing didn't know how to say many things to her family, so she unknowingly gave them to the trusted Master Xiao. Xiao Yining asked, when did you feel that he started to become cold? The young girl blushed and hesitated, saying, it's after Qixi. Xiao Yining calculated the time in his mind. According to Su Jing, she and Zhou Peng met on a blind date at the beginning of the year, and the two tried to start dating in a few days. They had been together for more than half a year on Qixi. Is it true that after obtaining it, one does not cherish it? Not necessarily. Xiao Yining pondered. Because there are still best friends at home, Xiao Yining did not video with Su Jing. What she needs to calculate is not a big deal, and there is no need to look at her face. Xiao Yining asked Su Jing for some relevant information and planned to invite the immortal family to take a look the next morning when it was fragrant. "Excuse me, why don't you help her calculate now?" Gong Jiamu raised his hand curiously and asked, "Is there any explanation?" "Ah. There's nothing to say," Xiao Yining hesitated and replied, "it depends on personal habits." You hit the nail on the head and said, "She's afraid of ghosts." "You're so annoyed." Xiao Yining threw a pillow over in anger. Amidst the laughter of Gong Jiamu and Miyu, she admitted with embarrassment and anger, "That's not possible. Ziku is the ghost hour, I don't want to burn incense at this hour. After the hour of high, it's not enough. This is the rule. The rule. Goose, goose, goose." Mio laughed and let out a goose cry. Xiao Yining saw Huang Shiba squatting next to Mio, imitating her geese meowing with a smile and flipping her belly out. Xiao Yining pounced angrily and said, "Hey, do you understand what respecting a master means?" "Oh my, don't tease me. I was wrong." Laughter filled the room. This night with my best friend was as joyful as ever. The next day was Sunday, and the three people who had stayed up late the previous day had all overslept before gradually waking up at around 10 o'clock. Xiao Yining tidied up briefly, incensed the old immortal, and then began to investigate for Su Jing. It's also Su Jing's fate. Hu Qijie is on duty today. After finishing her calculations, seventh sister went to see it herself and rolled her eyes when she returned, saying, "What scumbag. A good little girl insists on finding a man in the garbage dump." With the help of Sister Seven's eyes, Xiao Yining also took a vague glance and snorted, eating in the bowl and thinking about the pot. How could a dog man think so beautiful? "Don't insult the dog," Gong Jiamu, who was watching beside, became unhappy and picked up Xiao Yining's little dog Milk Tea that passed by his feet, rubbing it. Milk Tea stirred up and forcefully broke free from her arms, running away. As for the cat Pudding, she has been walking around Gongjiamu since last night and has not been given any chance to make any progress. Xiao Yining cursed Su Jing's boyfriend Zhou Peng in extremely poor language, saying, "Garbage, scumbags, bugs." Hu Qijie joined forces and said, "That's it, what kind of trash? Let me tell you, haha. You're not allowed to tell the little girl that this scumbag is her right fate. Early separation, early recovery." Ah. Xiao Yining was confused and said, "Isn't that good?" Hu Qijie disapproved and said, "What's wrong? This is to get her out of trouble. Besides, Xingyuan doesn't mean she must get married. She's not just this Xingyuan. Anyway, you can't say it. If you say it, I won't show you next time." After finishing speaking, Hu Qijie raised her hand and calculated, "Missing this garbage opportunity won't delay for a few years. That's it." After speaking, she turned into smoke and returned to the hall. Seeing Xiao Yining finished, Miyu leaned in and said, "What do you mean? You're cursing, this girl has met a scumbag." Xiao Yining angrily said, "Big scumbag." In Hu Qijie's opinion, Zhou Peng is a lazy and gluttonous person. In terms of personality, although he hasn't reached the level of soft food and hard food, he is not a good match. But his character and choices can be very problematic. Zhou Peng's family is of Hebei nationality. Although they have been working hard around BJ for many years and have accumulated some wealth, they have not been able to settle in BJ. At the beginning of the year, after being persuaded by his family, Zhou Peng planned to find a local BJ girl for a blind date and marriage, so that after 5 years of marriage, he could naturally obtain a BJ household registration. I took a liking to Su Jing because I felt that the girl's personality was not too restrictive on him, and people were simply unable to see through his intentions. Since he had a purpose, Zhou Peng would certainly use various means. At first, he was enthusiastic, persuasive, and considerate, and soon won Su Jing's heart, believing that Zhou Peng was a suitable husband candidate. Moreover, Zhou Peng's family has repeatedly used the reason of hoping that their son will get married soon, saying that if they get along well, they will get engaged within the year and receive a certificate the following year. After so many twists and turns, Su Jing simply believed that the two of them would soon become one family. During the Qixi festival, Su Jing could not help but plead with Zhou Peng and handed herself over. Things have changed from here on. Since you have already taken down the girl, let's not panic. We can see if there is anything better. Zhou Peng's sister raised her eyebrows, smug, with a pair of hanging eyes full of praise for her younger brother. It must be our Xiaopeng who has the means. Isn't that girl from the Su family unable to run away this time? Zhou Peng lazily played games on the bed, ignoring his partner. Zhou's older sister didn't care either. She turned to Zhou's mother in disgust. I've heard recently that the Lao Qian family is also looking for a partner for the girl. His girl is a primary school teacher and his family has a house in the 5th district of the city, unlike the old Su family who lives in Huairou. If she can become Xiaopeng, she can move to the city with her. Zhou's mother hesitated and said, if the conditions are good, can you take a liking to our Xiaopeng? Sister Zhou's eyes were fixed on Zhou Peng's head, and she exclaimed, oh my mom, don't underestimate our Xiaopeng. That girl from the Su family has only been coaxed by him for half a year, and it's not easy to coax a female teacher. She glanced at Zhou Peng and continued, that's why the female teacher from the Qian family is a few years older than the one from the Su family, but it's better to be a little older, to hurt people and not cause trouble. Upon hearing this, Zhou Peng lifted his eyes and was about to speak. Sister Zhou hurriedly continued, but I've seen her. She looks very neat, with a big chest and curly buttocks. Xiaopeng, you love to see things like this on your phone every day. Zhou Peng pursed his lips and said, sister, don't scare me. If I don't look good, I won't speak up. It will take 5 years to obtain a household registration after getting married. Sister Zhou quickly comforted her and said, sister, I can't lie to you. You can rest assured to go and see each other. If you don't like this, I can introduce you later. You should be prepared for the Su family girl, and don't let her discover it. If nothing else happens, it will still be her in the end. Zhou Peng was overjoyed and said, don't worry, sister. If you get it, you can still let her run away. It's sticky. Sometimes I can't even bother to talk to her. After listening to Xiao Yining, Mi Yu and Gong Jiamu also became angry. This man is so scumbag. If you tell your client, she should break up, right? Xiao Yining sighed and said, I can only say that I try my best, but you can't influence other people's thoughts. It's not uncommon for me to clearly tell them that it's not appropriate or reliable, and they will hang themselves on a crooked neck tree. She glanced at Su Jing's profile picture on WeChat and sincerely said, I hope this isn't a silly girl. Xiao Yining truthfully told Su Jing about the matter. This person's heart is not right. He is going on a blind date just to find a local girl with a BJ household registration. And he is indeed hanging on to you now. His cousin, who doesn't know if she is a cousin or a cousin, is still helping him introduce a new blind date. You are not his only choice. Xiao Yining hesitated for a while, but still listened to Hu Qijia's words and did not tell Su Jing about Zhou Peng's true fate. Isn't it not good for me to do this? Xiao Yining, who usually says whatever she sees, hesitated. Mi Yu blinked and interrupted her, let's not talk about whether it's good or not. Can you explain to us first? What is a good relationship? Xiao Yining simply said, those who are destined to get married are destined. Gong Jiamu asked, is Zheng Yuan the only one? Before Xiao Yining could answer, Mi Yu refuted Gong Jiamu and said, how could it be? So many people get married in 2 or 3 marriages. Xiao Yining chuckled and nodded repeatedly, yes, ha ha ha, that's what's going on. In the concept of metaphysics, there are 2 types of peach blossoms. Among them, the legitimate peach blossom is the object of marriage, while the biased peach blossom is commonly known as the biased peach blossom. Either the timing is wrong, or the person is wrong, in short, it cannot reach the end. A person's life may have more than one positive fate, but each positive fate is always someone who appears at the right time and can lead to marriage. If you miss the right fate, then if you want to get married, you have to wait for the next fate that you don't know when to meet. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Scum Man III. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Chapter 7 Scum Man III, that is to say, it doesn't matter whether you are a scumbag or not, right? Gong Jiamu summarized. That's right. But I always explicitly told the pilgrims before. Even the scumbag would say it, and Zheng Yuan would also say it. This is also a hesitant point for Xiao Yining. Did the person you told last time get married to a scumbag? Xiao Yining fell silent. Huang Shiba didn't know where he came from again, so he pretended to be old-fashioned and scolded Xiao Yining, if I had to say it, you just thought too much. Hu Qijie asked you not to say it. If you dare to say it, it will anger you. Xiao Yining knew it was right, but he still gave it a bad look and said, you're everywhere. Miyu looked curiously at the place where Huang Shiba was, but found nothing. Ning Ning, who are you talking to? Is it the immortal family? It's just that you're not here to take me down. Huang Shiba rolled and stood up straight, responding humanely. Unfortunately, no one except Xiao Yining saw it. Xiao Yining said, it's my messenger horse. It's from the Huang family. Huang Shiba crossed his waist and said, you tell them my big size, Huang Shiba. Xiao Yining pretended not to hear. Miyu asked, do I need to say hello or do I need a fragrance? Xiao Yining looked at Huang Shiba eagerly waiting and deliberately said, no need, you can't see either. You're not a good person. Huang Shiba shouted angrily, rolled in place, turned into smoke and ran away. Su Jing remained silent for half a day after receiving Xiao Yining's reply. It wasn't until the afternoon of the next day that the small red dots appeared again on Su Jing's profile picture on WeChat. Thank you, Master Xiao. But I still want to see it with my own eyes. Can you help me calculate how I can see him on a blind date? Xiao Yining calculated again, but Hu Qijie didn't come down this time. She just gave Xiao Yining a reply. So Xiao Yining told Su Jing, you should go to this place at noon the day after tomorrow. It should be near the place you know. She described the scene she saw. It's a CAFA, I didn't see the specific address, but I saw that you've been there 2 or 3 times, and you've been there once in the past week. Su Jing felt a bit dazed and said, I know where it is. Her mood was momentarily uncertain whether it was good or bad. That coffee shop was the place where she promised Zhou Peng to date, and it had a special meaning in her heart. I didn't expect that the same store was just a convenient place for blind dates in Zhou Peng's eyes. Following Xiao Yining's guidance, on that day, Su Jing went to that CAFA. She didn't figure out how to face all of this, nor did she figure out what to do if she really witnessed Zhou Peng's blind date with someone else. It's just that there seems to be a smoldering fire burning in my chest. If I don't see it with my own eyes, without a result, this fire won't be able to burn out or extinguish. She sat in the car for a long time before deciding to face it. The car was driven by one of her cousins. Xiao Yining was worried that she would be weak and powerless in the face of petty people like Zhou Peng, and that even a well-behaved girl wouldn't be able to curse profanity. She advised her to invite a family and friend to accompany her, preferably a man. Su Jing has been obedient and gentle for over 20 years, and most of all, she listens to advice. Moreover, it has always been the advice of the master who has always believed in it. So I made an appointment with my aunt's cousin to accompany me. Just because there was some concern for face, I didn't tell my cousin what to do. Having her cousin wait in the car at the door, Su Jing said, I'll be out soon. Then we'll go back. Su's cousin was very confused, but he didn't ask much. In the eyes of this iron and silly person, the girls may be so confusing. So he nodded and, while Su Jing was getting off the car, he rolled down the car window and lit a cigarette, watching as Su Jing walked into the cafe door carrying her bag. Girls in love seem to have a radar on top of their heads, so they can spontaneously find their loved ones without much searching or looking around. Su Jing walked in and glanced at Zhou Peng sitting in the corner. Zhou Peng had a simple and gentle smile on his face, saying something. Sitting opposite was a young girl who looked quite dignified, with a somewhat reserved expression. There is no doubt about blind dates. Su Jing felt a bunch of people screaming and shouting in her mind. She recalled that 2 people were in the hotel on Qixi, and Zhou Peng's sweet words and his physical and mental delivery were absurd and ridiculous. Recalling that moment in this situation made her feel particularly ashamed and disgusted. She stood stiffly in place for half a day without moving, feeling the fire in her chest carrying blood surging along the way, burning her face and eyes red. Seeing her standing for a long time, a waiter came over and asked, "Madam, what do you need? Is it for takeout or for use here?" Su Jing took a deep breath as her hand touched a triangular object in her pocket. A talisman sent by Xiao Yining in advance. Su Jing's cold fingertips grasped the talisman, then tightly grasped it in her palm, as if she could draw some strength from it. Then she took a deep breath, grabbed her bag, and walked straight towards Zhou Peng. As she approached, Zhou Peng accidentally turned his head and saw her. At that moment, the unexpected and panicked expression on the seemingly innocent scumbag's face made Su Jing calm a bit. She ignored Zhou Peng and walked over to greet his blind date. "Hello, I am Zhou Peng's girlfriend." "Oh, I am now my ex-girlfriend." Zhou Peng clearly panicked and said, "Xiao Jing, why are you?" Su Jing didn't want to hear him argue or explain, so she continued on her own, "I'm sorry to bother you, but Zhou Peng is a scumbag. He has been dating me for half a year and is ready to get engaged. She also promised her family to get married this year. Then she came out on a blind date behind my back." The girl who was on a blind date with Zhou Peng showed an incredulous expression. She stood up and picked up her coat and bag, saying to Zhou Peng, "I don't know what's wrong with you. How about you solve it first, and I'll leave first. I don't have much to solve with him either." Out of anger, Su Jing spoke quickly and her voice trembled a bit, but her attitude was very firm. According to Su Jing's own personality, she cannot do anything too extreme. The talisman in her pocket was slightly hot, giving her a little courage and comfort. This warmth is enough for her to make a strong decision. "I won't marry scumbags, and there's no future." After entering, she looked firmly into Zhou Peng's eyes for the first time and said, "We're done, scumbags." The blind date girl looked at her in surprise and admiration. Obviously, Su Jing's performance made her completely believe Su Jing's words. She had already put on her coat and now reached out to the waiter to pay the bill. "Mr. Zhou, I have deleted our AA and WeChat accounts, so I don't need to contact them anymore." "That's great. Finally, there's no cheap scumbag left." After receiving first-hand news from Xiao Yining in her best friend group, Miyu nodded with satisfaction. "By the way, what talisman did you give her?" Xiao Yining smiled unconsciously and said, "It's just an ordinary popularity symbol that helps with interpersonal relationships. I just didn't tell her what it is. She has enough judgment and courage, but only needs a little bit of push." Gong Jiamu interjected curiously, "Speaking of talismans, how did you make this thing? Did you write it yourself?" Xiao Yining replied, "Yes, when I have free time on weekends, I will write it myself. In addition to some commonly used things, I also need to pack the incense ash in the classroom. So the talisman I folded cannot be opened." Xiao Yining suddenly remembered the past and asked Gong Jiamu, "Mumu, don't you have any fragrant roots at home?" Miyagi gave the same answer as Mio before. "What is the root?" "It's not important," Xiao Yining said. "Anyway, can I give you a talisman?" "Okay, why use it?" Gong Jiamu didn't intend to refuse, although she didn't really believe in it, it was her best friend's intention. "Didn't you have another problem with the Bluetooth speaker?" Xiao Yining said. Miyu remained dumbfounded and said, Mumu, is your Bluetooth speaker broken again? Gong Jiamu has already thrown away 4 Bluetooth speakers within a year. A year ago, Gong Jiamu and his colleague He Jiayin shared a 2-bedroom apartment. He Jiayin is a local indigenous person, but she doesn't want to go home every day. In addition, she goes home too far during overtime, so she decided to stay near the company from Monday to Friday and only return to her home on Saturdays and Sundays. On a weekend night when He Jiayin was not around, at 3 a.m., Gong Jiamu was awakened by the sound of a guitar. She was drowsy and could vaguely hear a man singing. The voice was so clear, as if it was right next door. Next door. Gong Jiamu sat up and followed the sound, which came from He Jiayin's room. Gong Jiamu pulled out her finger tiger from her pillow and placed it between her fingers. She stood at the door of He Jiayin with her phone and listened. She remembers He Jiayin having a ukulele, but it was clearly the sound of the guitar. There are no other sounds besides guitar and singing. After listening for a moment, she pushed the door open and pressed the light on the side of the door. A bright room, empty and empty. On the floor, a Bluetooth speaker resembling a phonograph, only the size of a palm, lay quietly, emitting loud guitar and singing sounds that were completely mismatched with its petite body. Gong Jiamu breathed a sigh of relief, checked the Bluetooth speaker, unplugged the power, and pressed the shutdown button. Put it back in place. 10 minutes later, she had to wake up again to stop the damn speaker from singing. At 3:40 in the morning, sitting on the sofa in the living room, Gong Jiamu rigorously confirmed according to the instructions provided by Baidu that the Bluetooth speaker was turned off, no battery, no Bluetooth function was turned on, and there was no possibility of being connected by anyone else. Gong Jiamu looked at the time and felt that it was not appropriate to go downstairs and throw a speaker in the middle of the night, let alone not say hello to He Jiayin. After all, it was her thing. Once again, it was confirmed that it was closed, and Gong Jiamu took a sofa blanket and tightly wrapped the Bluetooth speaker, ensuring that even if it sang again, it wouldn't disturb her sleep. I just threw the bundled Bluetooth speaker onto the sofa and went back to my room to continue sleeping. The first thing Gong Jiamu did when he woke up the next day was to go downstairs and throw away the speaker, while also buying himself breakfast to come back. This is her first unbreakable bond with Bluetooth speakers. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Big Cat 1. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Big Cat 1. Later, due to a job transfer, He Jiayin switched to self-media, but her new workplace was too far away. Gong Jiamu moved to a new house. This time it's a spacious room, friendly for solitary residents. The new house is well decorated, and the landlord is renting it out for the first time after renovation. The whole house is spacious and beautiful, with a large bathtub in the bathroom, brand new. In order to listen to music while taking a bath, Gong Jiamu bought a Bluetooth speaker. In the first 3 days, she was cautious but peaceful. So Gong Jiamu relaxed his guard. Then at 2 o'clock in the morning one day, when Gong Jiamu had just turned off his phone and was about to go to bed, he caught off guard. They are brave. The speaker independently played a song called The Lone Brave to Gong Jiamu, who was about to fall asleep. Gong Jiamu lay in bed and rolled his eyes. Xiaodu, close. In the darkness, Xiaodu's rebellious misinterpretation of this sentence not only did not close, but also began to cut songs. Gong Jiamu raised his volume and said, low, close. Xiaodu emits a series of loud music switch button sounds. Meow. Gong Jiamu could only get up and put on slippers to forcibly cut off the power. Fortunately, this Xiaodu student did not pass the return period, so Gong Jiamu decisively returned the item for a refund and placed a new order with the neighboring competitor Xiao Yi student. Xiao Yi is a girl with a sweet voice, and it is said that she enjoys chatting with people very much. During the month at home, Xiao Yi did not engage in such bizarre singing activities. Instead, she often responded to Gong Jiamu's TV or phone calls by saying, "Hey, I'm here. Perhaps I bought it cheap, but the lowest-end Xiaoyi is prone to audio misreading," said Gong Jiamu's technical male colleague. So after clarifying the requirements and carefully screening, Gong Jiamu bought a relatively high-end Bluetooth speaker that cost several hundred yuan. An upgraded version of Xiaoyi Classmate. However, there is no egg. The upgraded version of Xiaoyi has clear sound quality and excellent sound effects, and the same goes for it at night. Gong Jiamu has already said that he is tired of these two words. Which silly fork in this building has been connecting to other people's Bluetooth speakers? I wish him the best when he goes to the bathroom, only the seasoning pack. Gong Jiamu thought angrily. She started clicking on the phone management app to turn off the Bluetooth function when not using the speaker, to prevent accidental connections. However, her little love was not sure if it was because it was too high-end. One day, a month after buying it, Gong Jiamu returned home from work and walked to the door, only to hear her little love reveling alone at home. Gong Jiamu angrily took out the key to open the door and directly entered the house. He unplugged Xiao Yining, who was singing loudly, "Rolling in the Deep," and threw the cable into the corner of the cabinet. From then on, he announced his farewell to Bluetooth speakers, which were not very intelligent smart appliances. That night, Gong Jiamu posted a friend circle and confidently said, "Say goodbye to Bluetooth speakers. I'm probably not compatible with this kind of thing." Miyu, who had already entered the world of metaphysics, pondered for a moment and asked, "Have you ever thought that using a Bluetooth speaker would inevitably cause problems? Is there any other possibility?" Gong Jiamu confused his face and said, "Is the usage incorrect?" Miyu. No, it's that kind of thing." Gong Jiamu said, "What other aspects can there be? Isn't this a common technical problem with Bluetooth appliances?" Obviously, despite 4 different Bluetooth speakers and nearly 10 similar situations within a year, two-time maiden Gong Jiamu has not considered any unscientific direction at all. The most unscientific judgment she made was that she was probably not naturally suitable for using Bluetooth speakers. So when the advanced version of Xiao Yining was only used for just over a month, he was honorably laid off and forced into the cabinet to eat dust. "Anyway, just put the talisman I gave you into the pillowcase and don't touch it or get wet." Xiao Yining instructed and asked anxiously, "Your ancestors really don't have fragrant roots, right? The talisman I gave you is so powerful that it can't get close to you in any way. If your ancestors have a family fairy or something, they can't stand you." Gong Jiamu was very certain and said, "There really isn't. If there were, wouldn't I know? I've even heard a lot about raising immortals. If my family had one, I would definitely know." Xiao Yining felt at ease and said, "That's good. Just be careful not to touch the talisman when you're with your aunt. It's okay to change pillowcases or something. Don't be curious to open them, just take a pillow of incense ash." Gong Jiamu responded, "Oh my, you think I'm a husky and I won't dismantle it." Xiao Yining chuckled, "If I hadn't told you what was inside, you would have been curious to open it." "I don't know about you yet." Miyu urged, "Since you have taken the talisman given by Ning Ning, why don't you try using the Bluetooth speaker again?" Gong Jiamu was vigilant and said, "What are you doing? No way. Stop thinking. Don't think about it. I'm going against Bluetooth speakers. If you don't use them, then don't use them. You either. 99% new, you want me to bring them to you at the next party." Miyu shook her head and said, "No, no, no. I have it at home." The next morning, the talisman sent by Xiao Yining arrived. Wrapped in a small red package, when opened, it is a talisman folded into a triangle, and covered with a waterproof soft plastic shell. "Did the red envelope I specifically selected look good?" Xiao Yining boasted on WeChat. "Lovely." Gong Jiamu stuffed the talisman into the pillowcase and sent her a thumbs-up emoji. Gong Jiamu, who respects mysticism but has little interest in it, has not felt the effect of talismans for the time being. However, her best friend's intentions have made her quite happy. Whether it's Xiao Yining's concern or Miyu's love. With this thought in mind, she stuffed the small cake fed with rice pomelo into her mouth with a whimper. Hey, it smells so good. After working overtime for a few days in a row, Xiao Yining returned home feeling dizzy. He was so tired that he didn't even have the strength to eat and collapsed directly on the sofa. As soon as I entered the door, a fox fairy, covered in orange red and with a fluffy tail like a big orange, lightly jumped onto the TV cabinet across from the sofa. This is Hu Xiaoju, the youngest sister of the Hu family currently in the Tang Xian family, who is also the messenger of the Tang family. Since Huang Shiba and Xiao Yining got angry on their last best friend's night, they haven't seen anyone for several days, as if announcing a strike. In recent days, Hu Xiaoju has been on duty. Hu Xiaoju's style is completely different from that of the bustling Huang Shiba. While elegantly lifting one paw to signal Xiao Yining to look over, he spoke slowly and softly, and his words were completely different from his tone. No, Ningning, the pudding and milk tea were beaten. Ah! Upon hearing that her beloved cat and dog had been beaten, Xiao Yining sat up with excitement and realized that when she returned from work today, the usually sticky golden gradient fat cat pudding and West Highland Terrier milk tea had not come up to welcome her. Pudding. Milk tea. She called out the names of the cats and dogs and stood up to look for them. In the dog house, she saw two huddled together for warmth. Seeing the owner shouting, the pudding meowed coquettishly, looking weak, pitiful, and aggrieved. Although milk tea is called milk tea, it is clearly not as good as pudding in one of the teas. Seeing the owner, milk tea immediately becomes excited and lively, with no visible signs of being beaten. What's going on? Xiao Yining reached out to soothe the cat and dog, and turned her head to ask Hu Xiaoju. Hu Xiaoju still spoke politely, "You're not at home today." A foreign immortal family broke in. They didn't say hello to the immortal family in the hall, but they didn't violate any rules. It seemed like they had a purpose. When they entered, they headed straight for these two cats and dogs, beat them up, and then left. Xiao Yining said silently, "So you didn't stop a little." Hu Xiaoju explained, "You know, ordinary cats and dogs don't get close to Tangzi's position. The immortal family went straight to the cat and dog, but we didn't pay attention. Besides, it came and went quickly, with a clear purpose. It wouldn't have come to beat up for no reason. Why don't you take a photo and see what's going on?" Xiao Yining was confused and said, "What kind of immortal family is it?" "It's just for beating pudding in milk tea." Hu Xiaoju nodded and said, "It must be true." It didn't even notice that there was an immortal family in our hall watching it, nor did it say hello. It was very focused on beating it. It sat up straight, elegantly overlapping its two front paws, and thought seriously, "The Taoist sect looks quite tall. If we don't want to appear, we can't see its true form. But judging from its way of beating cats and dogs, that set of martial arts should be a scattered immortal of the feline family. Meow meow fist, right." Xiao Yining choked silently. But where can pudding and milk tea provoke the immortal family? Pudding is a cat, it doesn't even go out. Can milk tea be something that happened when I was walking my dog that I didn't pay attention to? Hu Xiaoju didn't answer and tilted his head to look at Xiao Yining. On an orange fox face, it was clearly written. "Ask yourself." Looking at the time, it's still early. Xiao Yining didn't hesitate much and simply tidied up before starting to offer incense and invite immortals. Because it wasn't a big deal, the immortal family in the hall didn't come down, they just showed her the situation. Xiao Yining vaguely sensed the scene at that time. A yellow and black fluffy light and shadow roared from the window, with little hostility but no intention of greeting or appearing. They didn't even glance towards the entrance of the hall and rushed towards the direction of the cat climbing frame. The pudding was sleeping soundly on the rack, completely unaware of the danger. The light and shadow looked as big as two puddings, so I pounced and pressed the pudding under my paws, making a meow fist. Pudding was stunned by the beating, meowing in agony, trying to fight back, but just woke up and his chubby body was not flexible enough. Not only did he fail to fight back, but he also received a series of combos. In an instant, he pounced down, drooping his ears and tail, hugging his head and scurrying around. Upon hearing the sound of the pudding, the silly milk tea rushed over and was also hit by an unexpected guest who had just finished beating the cat. After tidying up the two cats and dogs, the light and shadow paused in place for a moment, as if thinking. It looked at the timid look of the pudding milk tea, strolled back and forth, and finally walked back and forth from the window like when it arrived. Before leaving, I didn't forget to slap the pudding twice again, leaving the pudding covered in golden fur in a mess. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Big Cat 2. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. Big Cat 2. Retracting the induction, Xiao Yining agreed with Hu Xiaoju's judgment. It was indeed because he had no distractions and only wanted to beat the pudding, and even milk tea was just passed away, suffering from the fish in the pond. Yellow-black, much larger than cats, feline family. Xiao Yining was surprised and said, "This cat is really meowing, isn't it a little tiger?" Hu Xiaoju gave her a white glance and said, "There's no such a small tiger. And why do tigers come knocking at cats? What else could it be because of?" Xiao Yining couldn't figure it out. This kind of immortal family's targeting of ordinary animals is not common. You might say the other person is careful, but they are steady, accurate, and ruthless when they hit the cat, but they still have a sense of propriety. They just beat the cat very hard but didn't suffer much damage. I can't figure it out. Even if I put on incense without getting any warning, it means it's not a big deal. Xiao Yining temporarily put aside her lack of liberation and comforted her beloved cat for a while, even if it was over. Unexpectedly, this is just the beginning. The next day, Xiao Yining returned home from work and received a soft warning from Hu Xiaoju. Ning Ning is not doing well, the pudding and milk tea have been beaten again. The green tea cat pudding curled up next to the dog milk tea and called out in a mournful and gentle voice. But it wasn't installed this time. This cat-like fairy of unknown origin still didn't hit particularly hard, but it was obviously heavier than yesterday because the pudding was swollen. It originally intended to cling to its owner's arms and act coquettishly seeking protection, but as soon as Xiao Yining reached out to embrace it, the pudding let out a pitiful meow. Xiao Yining quickly let go and peeled off the thick and dense golden hair to check. There was indeed a slight redness and swelling on both sides of its plump body, giving it a pitiful look as if it had been trampled on the ground. Silly Guzzy milk tea was wilting beside her, not as if she had been beaten badly, but rather as if she had been frightened by the usual bully pudding being beaten hard. While Xiao Yining was checking the pudding, milk tea was circling around this person, cat by cat. Although she didn't do anything to help, she was extremely busy. In order to uncover the truth, Xiao Yining took a leave and prepared to guard the cat while waiting for it. However, as if sensing an anomaly, the day was particularly calm, and the scattered fairy did not appear. Next is the weekend. Xiao Yining didn't dare to go out and remotely helped clients with incense and investigation at home. I also seem to know that she is upset. All the customers are old customers, and things are just trivial. The 2 days of the weekend passed peacefully, and the 2 inexplicable beatings before did not leave any shadow on the green tea cat and silly dog. Pudding and milk tea also regained their liveliness. On Monday morning, Xiao Yining, who had a big heart, lit incense without any abnormalities. So she confidently carried her bag to work. As soon as Xiao Yining returned from lunch break and walked into the office, she saw Hu Xiaoju emerging from somewhere and squatting upright in front of her computer. An ominous premonition arose naturally. Xiao Yining quickly took out headphones from his pocket and put them on, pretending to answer the phone and saying, "Hello," while turning his head and walking out. Hu Xiaoju tilted her head and swayed her fluffy tail, lightly jumping onto another computer desk. She followed Xiao Yining all the way to the stairwell. As Xiao Yining closed the stairwell door and turned her head, she saw Hu Xiaoju elegantly sitting with her front paws folded at the 7 or 8 steps up the stairs, maintaining a slight downward view of her height. She calmly said the phrase she used to say these days. "Not good, Ningning, the pudding has been beaten again. The ominous premonition has come true." Heart Liver Cat Baby was beaten 3 times in a week, and Xiao Yining covered her chest in anger and said, "It's been 3 times. Didn't you stop it?" Hu Xiaoju nodded and said, "The person in charge of the hall went to stop me today." That scattered immortal left a message. Xiao Yining was indignant and said, "What did it say? What kind of grudges and grievances can you hit a kitten 3 times? Hu Xiaoju straightened her body and tried to put on a serious and fierce expression. With one paw pressed against the higher step, as if pressing against the head of the pudding, she imitated and said, "Remember, those who ask you to be in charge, she and her cat should stay away from me." To be honest, this sentence is very imposing, and Hu Xiaoju tried his best to recreate the scene at that time. Unfortunately, its slow and gentle tone when speaking these lines seems a bit funny. If it weren't for worrying about the pudding, Xiao Yining would have been amused. Hu Xiaoju finished imitating and conscientiously completed the task, retracting her claws and restoring her elegant sitting posture. It glanced at Xiao Yining's expression and asked tentatively, "Ningning, have you ever thought of what it's because of?" Xiao Yining leaned back against the wall and fell into contemplation. "Let me stay away, that must be the person I've been in contact with recently. Let my cat also stay away, so only those who have come to my house can touch the pudding." She started counting one by one with her fingers. This week, only Miss Gao, who was seeking marriage for her daughter, came to the house. The other victims were all from afar and couldn't get in touch with the pudding. But Miss Gao is also an old pilgrim, and she didn't see any immortal fate this time. It shouldn't be her. Pass. Last week, Su Jing came to give a thank you gift, but left without putting down anything at the door. She didn't see any pudding, and she was also an old pilgrim. Pass. Zhang Zhang also opened my house last week. She came specifically to see pudding and played with it for a long time. But Zhang Zhang is my colleague, and if she had a fairy relationship, I should know. She has never seen this wandering fairy around, nor does she have a similar aura. That's not her. Pass. Xiao Yining thought for a while, neither this nor that, and the whole person was confused. No one left, Xiaoju. Can you help me think about who else came to my house last week or last week? Hu Xiaoju tilted his head and looked innocent. Then you should ask Huang Shiba. I only came to take over last week, did you forget? Huang Shiba followed you last week, and I'm still practicing. Xiao Yining suddenly realized, during the 2 days when Huang Shiba was here last week, I only saw rice and wood. Isn't it their fairy? Xiao Yining returned to his workstation and immediately opened the small group on the top of his computer's WeChat account, drinking and eating meat. Ning Ning hopes not to work overtime. Rice, wood, wood, wood. Yu dreams of becoming rich. Moo Moo wants to have a cat. Ning Ning hopes not to work overtime. Are you both sure that you don't have Xian'er at home? Moo Moo wants to have a cat. No. Definitely and definitely, not necessarily. Dream of making a fortune with pomelo. MMUU dreams of becoming rich. Last time I went back, I asked, my dear Mama Yu dreams of becoming rich. Maybe it's about the same. My great-grandfather, when he was young, once led a fairy and opened a hall. Xiao Yining typed out a string of ellipses. Moo Moo wants to have a cat. Why did you suddenly ask this? Ning Ning hopes not to work overtime. It's a long story. Moo Moo wants to have a cat. Let's make a long story short. Xiao Yining clattered on the keyboard and told the story. Mookie wants to have a cat. Moo Moo wants to have a cat. What can a kitten do wrong? Why beat up the cat? Ning Ning hopes not to work overtime. Anyway, I can basically rule out the other people who came to my house these 2 weeks, only you two are left. Since you said you have fragrant roots for rice, why don't we meet alone tonight? Let me take a look. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Big Cat 3. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Chapter 10 Big Cat 3. In order to make it to me you for dinner without overtime, Xiao Yining worked tirelessly and finally clocked in at 6:30 on time. As soon as we met, Xiao Yining carefully and attentively looked at Mio, and indeed found some immortal aura on the collar and cuffs. Hu Xiaoju exclaimed in surprise, Ning Ning, there are so many immortal families around her. Perhaps he knew he was an acquaintance, but the immortal family following Miyu was not too reserved, and they all showed some signs. Firstly, it is the Hu family, whom Xiao Yining is usually most familiar with and has the best relationship with. She watched as several different fox tails poked out and swayed around Mio, including the fluffy and fiery red fox tail she had seen before at Mio's doorstep. It was a greeting to Xiao Yining. There are also two most prominent, snow-white fox tails, especially fluffy in pure white, very beautiful. After a fox tail flickered past, after a while, two slender snake tails slowly swayed past the cuffs of Miyu. Xiao Yining was somewhat surprised. She knew that Mio had a fairy family with her, but she didn't expect so many. The last time I saw the Hu family with a fiery red tail at Mio's house, there were also some white rabbits and other animals in the dream described by Mio. Huang Shiba also told her that he not only felt the anger of one or two immortal families. But Xiao Yining always thought that at most there were only 3 or 5. It wasn't until today, during the day, that Xiao Yining realized that there might have been more than just a few ancestors who had once stood in the immortal hall. Miyu put down her bag and sat opposite Xiao Yining, first greeting the waiter to order the dishes. After waiting for the waiter to walk away with the menu, she smiled and said to Xiao Yining, so, after looking at it for a while, what do you see? Xiao Yining let out a tisk and said, your ancestors seem to have really stood up. There are more than 1 or 2 of you. Miyu nodded and said, really? I've dreamt of 6 or 7 different things before. She picked up her cup and took a few sips of water before saying, after the matter with my house was resolved, my mom probably went back to her hometown to ask. According to the elderly in the family, my great-grandfather used to treat people's illnesses and I heard that he was very skilled. In my grandfather's generation, he also had some skills. But when he broke the 4 old things later on, he put them away and didn't mention them anymore. She curiously poked Xiao Yining and said, Ning Ning, how many did you see by my side? Tell me about it. Xiao Yining shook her head and said, oh, it's not easy to tell you about this. You know there are more than 1. I usually don't tell people what I see, but telling you is already an exception. Miyu was puzzled and said, is this the rule in your industry? Xiao Yining explained, it's an unwritten rule. Most people will follow the principle of not asking or answering. Even if they see the immortal family by the side of the pilgrim, they won't take the initiative to tell them. Miyu asked, why? And didn't I ask you? Xiao Yining didn't know where to start. She doesn't tell people about the affairs of the immortal family. On the one hand, she follows the rules, and on the other hand, it's her own habit. The connection of the immortal family is usually difficult to turn back and cannot be refused once it begins. Xiao Yining herself is unwilling to stand up and intervene in others in such matters. Seeing her speechless for a while, Miyu flattened her mouth and said, among the immortal families around me, which one has the most Hu Huang by Lu Hui? Can you always say that? Xiao Yining didn't want to speak, but seeing Miyu's pitiful expression, he hesitated for a moment and still told her the answer. The Hu family is the most. Next is the Chang family. Miyu's eyes lit up and he said, a string of furry foxes. Xiao Yining can understand Mio's feelings, but she obviously doesn't agree. After thinking for a moment, she said solemnly to Mio, "Rice, remember. It's better not to touch mystical things. Don't be too curious." What else did Mio want to ask? At this moment, the ordered dishes came up. Xiao Yining breathed a sigh of relief and quickly changed the topic with delicious food. Although there were still doubts and confusion, as a best friend, Miyu sensitively noticed Xiao Yining's reluctance to speak more, so she thoughtfully followed suit and changed the topic. After finishing their meal and going back to their respective homes, on the way to separation, Mio and Xiao Yining coincidentally opened Gong Jiamu's WeChat account. Pomelo. Wood. Pomelo. Ning Ning seems to dislike mentioning the immortal family around me. Mi Tong space. Mumu, it shouldn't have been the responsibility of the Rice family for my cat being beaten. Do you really not have fragrant roots in your home? Midriatic space. Schedule a meal tomorrow. Gong Jiamu, who received 4 private messages at the same time. After some thought, she replied to Xiao Yining first. Tai Tu Maiden Mu. There really isn't. Okay. Then I started passionately gossiping with Mio. Iron-headed girl Mu. How do you feel? Tell me more about it. Anticipated eyes. JPG. The story was too long, so Mio simply dialed a voice to Gong Jiamu and meticulously reproduced the detailed situation of today's meal. Finally, she summarized, Mumu, do you think Ning Ning doesn't really like this industry? She seems to be quite avoiding it. Gong Jiamu expressed the same feeling. It sounds true, and Ning Ning is so afraid of the dark and ghosts. She may not have been forced to do this job. Last time, she said as if jokingly, was she forced to inherit the family business? Is that right? Miyu, who had gained recognition, was very happy. Last time at the party, she even said that her father was a member of the Yin Hall, and because his eyes were not talented enough to see, she had asked her to help him since he was young. Maybe it was because her father forced her into this profession. After all, it's a waste not to do it, isn't it? That sounds a bit tragic for Ning Ning. After all, she used to graduate from a prestigious school and work in a large factory. If she didn't do this job, it might be even more fulfilling. Although this industry sounds quite fun, she herself is afraid that it will be quite miserable. Speaking of which, Gong Jiamu scratched his head and said, but she didn't say yesterday that her cat was beaten by the immortal family, excluding other guests. Isn't it you or me? So today you two had dinner, and she didn't mention this. Then she just made an appointment with me tomorrow night. Gong Jiamu suddenly became excited and said, is that because I also have the immortal family with me? But aren't you without Xian'er? Yeah, Gong Jiamu said dejectedly. It's really annoying. Both of you have cats, but my cat hates dogs. Now you both have immortals and don't take me with you. They are passionately gossiping here, while Xiao Yining on the other side is also pondering today's events. Although the immortal family around Mio did not directly come out to communicate with her, they also showed friendliness. If the immortal family is unwilling, it is completely possible not to follow along, so that Xiao Yining cannot see any traces. That is to say, the immortal family around Mio will not be the culprit who beat up the cat pudding. Then there's only one Gong Jiamu left. But when Xiao Yining met her before, he was very certain that there were no traces of the immortal family around Gong Jiamu, nor any aura of unknown origin. Moreover, as a northeasterner who understands the legends of shamans and immortals, Gong Jiamu firmly believes that his ancestors did not have fragrant roots. That means Xiao Yining thought of another possibility. End of this chapter.